It was June 26, 1977. The lights dimmed inside Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, Indiana. Nearly 18,000 fans stood waiting for the king. When Elvis Presley finally walked on stage, dressed in his white Mexican sundial jumpsuit, the crowd erupted. They didn't know it, but this would be the last time Elvis would ever perform. He smiled faintly, waved to the audience, and said softly, "This is for all my fans. Thank you for everything." He sang with all the heart he had left, and though his body was failing him, his voice, that unmistakable, soulful voice, still carried the room. Just 51 days later, the world would wake up to devastating news. Elvis Presley was gone. But what really happened before that final night? How did a poor boy from Tupelo, Mississippi rise to become the king of rock and roll? And what led to that haunting last performance? This is the story of Elvis Presley's final performance. Elvis Aaron Presley was born on January 8, 1935, in Tupelo, Mississippi. He was one of twin brothers, but his twin, Jesse Garon, was stillborn. From the moment he entered the world, Elvis was surrounded by both love and loss. His parents, Vernon and Gladys Presley, were poor but devoted. They lived in a small two-room house built by Vernon's own hands. Money was scarce, but music was everywhere. In the gospel churches of Tupelo, young Elvis found his first love, singing. He'd watch the choir sway, clap, and lift their voices toward heaven. That rhythm, that spirit, stayed with him forever. When the Presleys moved to Memphis in 1948, Elvis was just 13. The city was alive with blues, rhythm and blues, and gospel, a melting pot of sound. He spent his teenage years listening to black artists on Beale Street, soaking in the style that would later define his music. He wasn't popular in school. Shy, polite, with long hair and flashy clothes, Elvis stood out, and not always in a good way. But he had a voice, one that could melt hearts, and soon, the world would hear it. In July 1953, an 18-year-old Elvis walked into Sun Records to record a song, just a simple gift for his mother. The studio owner, Sam Phillips, heard something special in that voice. A year later, Phillips called Elvis back to record with guitarist Scotty Moore and bassist Bill Black. During a break, Elvis started fooling around singing "That's All Right, Mama," a rhythm and blues tune with a new twist. Sam Phillips hit record. When the song hit the radio, people went wild. They'd never heard anything like it, a mix of country, blues, and pure fire. By 1956, Elvis had become a household name. His first RCA single, Heartbreak Hotel, sold over 1 million copies. Then came Hound Dog, Don't Be Cruel, and Love Me Tender. His voice, his look, his moves, everything about Elvis was magnetic. He wasn't just a singer, he was a revolution. On television, his hip-shaking performances scandalized parents but mesmerized teenagers. He was raw, exciting, and free, the embodiment of a new era. By 1957, he was starring in films and performing to sold-out crowds across America. But just as he reached the height of his fame, destiny intervened again. In 1958, Elvis was drafted into the U.S. Army. He left behind screaming fans, an uncertain future, and for the first time, fame had to wait. Yet even in uniform, the king never lost his crown. When he returned in 1960, the world still adored him. He recorded hits like "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" and "It's Now or Never." His voice matured, rich with emotion. He was back, but the world around him was changing. Rock and roll had evolved, and new stars were rising. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, all influenced by Elvis himself, now ruled the charts. Still, the king wasn't done yet. In 1968, after years of light-hearted movie roles and forgettable soundtracks, Elvis staged a comeback. The '68 comeback special, broadcast on NBC, showed the world that Elvis was still the real thing. Clad in black leather, performing "If I Can Dream," he poured his soul into every word. It was a moment of redemption, and one of the most iconic performances in television history. Then came Las Vegas. In 1969, Elvis began performing at the International Hotel. Night after night, he sold out the room, dazzling audiences with hits like "Suspicious Minds," "In the Ghetto," and "Can't Help Falling in Love." His shows were electric, a blend of power, passion, and presence no one could match. Behind him, the TCB Band, Taking Care of Business, became legendary in their own right. For a few glorious years, Elvis was unstoppable again. He was slimmer, confident, and in full command of his art. Between 1969 and 1973, he performed over 600 concerts, many of them sold out. His Aloha from Hawaii concert in 1973 became the first concert broadcast live via satellite, watched by over 1 billion people worldwide. No one, not even the Beatles, had ever achieved that. But behind the glitter, something darker was brewing. The mid-1970s were not kind to Elvis Presley. He was working too much, sleeping too little, and increasingly dependent on prescription medication. Physically, he was struggling. Weight gain, exhaustion, and illness shadowed him. His marriage to Priscilla Presley ended in 1973. Though they remained close friends, the divorce broke his heart. He loved her deeply, and their daughter, Lisa Marie, was his anchor. Still, Elvis kept performing. Night after night, he gave everything he had, even when his body was begging for rest. By 1976, those close to him noticed alarming changes. He was bloated, forgetful, sometimes incoherent. But when he stepped on stage, something miraculous happened. The music came alive again. It's hard to imagine, but even in his weakest moments, Elvis's voice could still send shivers down your spine. His rendition of Unchained Melody during his final tour remains haunting, beautiful yet heartbreaking. Then came June 26, 1977, Indianapolis. Elvis walked on stage to thunderous applause. He looked tired, yes, heavier, slower, but his charisma was undimmed. He performed classics like Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, Hurt, Bridge Over Troubled Water, and finally, Can't Help Falling in Love. For an hour and a half, the King gave his people everything he had left. The crowd cheered as he said his last words on stage. "Until we meet again, may God bless you. Adios." It was his 1,684th concert, and his last. After the show, he returned to his home in Graceland, Tennessee. He rested, rehearsed, and prepared for his next tour, scheduled to begin just days later. But on August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley was found unresponsive in his bathroom at Graceland. He was just 42 years old. The world stood still. Millions mourned. It wasn't just the death of a singer. It was the end of an era. Even now, decades later, the legacy of Elvis Presley endures. More than 1 billion records sold, countless imitators, and millions of fans who still visit Graceland every year, leaving flowers, letters, and tears. He wasn't perfect. He was human, full of contradictions. But that's what made him real. Elvis wasn't just the king of rock and roll. He was the bridge between genres, races, and generations. He brought gospel to pop, country to rhythm and blues, soul to the mainstream. Artists from the Beatles to Bruce Springsteen, from Prince to Beyoncé, all cite him as an influence. As Paul McCartney once said, "Without Elvis, there would be no Beatles." His music still plays, in diners, on old record players, and in the hearts of those who grew up with him. Every time, "Can't Help Falling in Love" or "Love Me Tender" echoes through the air. It's as if Elvis is still here, reminding us of love, youth, and the golden days of rock and roll. It's hard to imagine now, but that final performance wasn't just an ending. It was a farewell gift. Elvis gave the world everything he had, and in that final song, he gave a piece of his soul. So when we think back to that night in Indianapolis, when the King walked on stage one last time, we're not just remembering his voice or his songs, we're remembering his spirit. Because legends don't die. They live on, in music, in memory, in moments frozen in time. And for Elvis Presley, the final note was not an ending. It was a promise. That love, true, timeless love, can never fade away.